Hey footy fans, time for a bit more footy fun with FootyFin, and with the NRL season now more than a week over, onto the Rugby World Cup, and things are finally starting to get a little bit interesting now. After 5 consecutive weekends of mostly pretty boring one-sided pool matches, the pool stages are over. And we look ahead to the quarterfinals. Now, in the quarterfinals, there's actually 4 Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere matchups, believe it or not. But we'll get on to that. Finally, Wallabies fans, we are put out of our misery. We've been prolonging the inevitable, and weirdly, we had to wait around until the very final pool match of the whole pool stages to take place between Fiji and Portugal this morning. But the Wallabies are officially on their way home from France. And really, for myself and for probably many other Wallabies fans, it's just really a sense of relief more than anything. We can actually get on with our lives. I mean, we knew there was a tiny, infinitesimal chance that they could get through. But I mean, my feeling is that justice would not have been served if that had been the case. And by the way, yes, you'll see the 2 emerald green jerseys behind me. This is my team from here on. I'm barracking for the men in green, Ireland, to win their first ever Rugby World Cup knockout match and hopefully go on to win the whole tournament. But they do have a bit of a mountain to climb. More on that later. So as I say, the final pool match of the whole lot was Fiji up against Portugal. Of course, Fiji have been pretty much red hot this tournament. And if the Wallabies were to get through, they would need Fiji to lose by more than 7 points and not to get a bonus point from 4 tries either. Now, it was on at 5 a.m. Brisbane time. I actually checked the score online while I was having breakfast, and after about 60 minutes, Portugal were up 17-10. And I thought, oh my God, surely this can't be possible. So anyway, I had to get ready for work, take off for work. What I ended up doing was pulling the car over on the way to work to watch the 3-minute highlights on the Stan Sport channel. So Portugal ended up snatching a miracle victory with the final try in the dying minutes and a conversion to win 24-23. So well done, Portugal, by the way. They've had their first ever Rugby World Cup win, and they've been one of the few sort of inspirational stories from this Rugby World Cup so far. But what that means is Fiji still got a bonus point because they finished within 7 points of Portugal. That left Australia and Fiji level on points on the table. But because Fiji beat Australia in their head-to-head clash, Fiji goes through. Now, interesting to think that if Australia had got just one more bonus point out of the tournament, for example, even if they'd lost to Wales but lost by 7 or less and got a losing bonus point, Australia would have gone through. But they actually lost to Wales by 34 points, so not even close. And they only scored 6 points in that match from 2 penalties in the first half. Anyway, I'd probably speak for other Wallabies fans, but as I sort of said earlier, if somehow Australia had scraped through and Fiji were the ones going home, I would have felt that it was wrong somehow. I would have had an empty feeling about that. I wouldn't have felt like justice had been done. And I feel that the Wallabies didn't deserve to progress any further in this tournament. Anyway, look, that's just me. Yeah, look, that's my take on it. Look, plenty is being said, and myself and many others have said a few things about where we think Rugby Australia should go from here and who should fall on their own sword. I do want to read a few quotes from an article today This article is in the Channel 9 newspapers, the Brisbane Times, Sydney Morning Herald, etc. The journalist was Ian Payton, and he did an interview with Clive Woodward, who of course was the England coach when England won the Rugby World Cup 20 years ago, and whose opposite number that day was Eddie Jones coaching the Wallabies. But of course they've buried the hatchet since then and became friends for a while. But he had a few interesting things to say, did Clive Woodward. He basically said that when Eddie first came in as England coach after 2015, he was very, very good, very effective, but basically the bitter disappointment of losing the 2019 Rugby World Cup final when he coached England, who were very lacklustre in the final against South Africa. Woodward thinks that that's actually sort of ruined Eddie Jones, and he's never been able to recover from it, and his effectiveness as a coach has kind of gone downhill from there, and I would agree, and many would agree. Anyway, look, so Woodward talks about picking teams, about having development pathways, about the importance of schoolboy teams, under 21s, the A teams like Australia A. Then he says, and I quote, the problem is administrators come in and they get hoodwinked by all this talk. They don't really understand the sport. They come in with a business background as successful people, but then they get hoodwinked by people like Eddie Jones. In other words, sold a shit sandwich by a smooth-talking salesman. Quote, the moment you do that, you not only lose it with the public, you lose it with the team. Definitely lost it with the public. Because you can't talk about a development team. It's not about that. I don't blame Eddie. If he can get away with it, then good on him. But I do blame the guys in charge because they've just been hoodwinked. In other words, they've had the wool pulled over their eyes. Blah blah blah. He talks about the fascination, the sort of obsession with poaching leagueies. So I'll come back to that. And he says, he refers to the past 2 weeks. I just shook my head when you just had one of your worst losses ever to Wales, and the guys heading up your union, Chairman Hamish McLennan, starts talking about signing up more league players. If I was a rugby union player, that's not what I want to hear. And interestingly, a story sort of broke last week about Angus Crichton, who's been a good player for the Rabbitohs and then the Roosters. Look, basically, the guy's pushing 30, and not that I don't want to associate any stigma with this, but he did have time away from the NRL this year due to bipolar disorder. I say well done to him for being open and frank about that and raising awareness about that. But he's not a young man, and he only played a couple of years of rugby in year 11 and 12, and he's been in the NRL for the better part of a decade. So not exactly a good signing, even if you wanted to go down that path. What else did Woodward say? Forking out big money for leagueies. He says that the issue with Eddie is he never just focused on the next game. He's talking the big talk about the long-term strategy, but it should always come down to the next game. Look, I'll talk another time about the fascination with poaching leagueies. Basically, it hasn't worked. I'm just looking at my clock there. He says, in closing, he thinks Eddie's a good coach. He just falls down on the management and leadership side. And he did also say, though, as a coach, since England lost in 2019 under Jones, it broke him. He's never been the same. And I'd agree with that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there, keep it under 10 minutes, and that's it. Wallabies go home. Look forward to the quarterfinals. Look out for my next post talking about Ireland v New Zealand, etc., etc. But yeah, we're out of our misery now. We can all move on with our lives as Wallabies fans. Anyway, until next time, catch you around the back of a scrum. See you.